Greetings, fellow Earthlings, and welcome to the tree! We're just going to have a quick flashback to the Piston Mania episode where we took off the rings, and here's a quick refresher on all the names involved. Now here is our piston, there's the wrist pin, there's the conrod. Now at the bottom is the oil control ring, also known as the oil scraper ring. It's quite flexible, and in the destruction manual it says it's number 1. Above the oil control ring is the lower compression ring, and in the destructions that is known as number 2. And then above that, logically enough, is the upper compression ring. And the upper and lower compression ring are both regular metal, as you might expect, and that's known as number 3. Now really, the oil control ring number 1 is in 3 parts. The black part is part A, and then it has 2 thinner metal parts above it, B and C. So it's kind of like an A sandwich with B and C bread. Alright, let's get on with it. Ring number 1, which is the ABC bread. Now here is a piston. I used to be afraid of these before Piston Mania. Up until a month ago, all I knew about putting the rings back on was that someone said there was a notch, and that would tell you how to put them back on. I think the notch they were talking about is that pin right there. It's in the groove for the lower compression ring, ring number 2. I think between all the instructions and research, I kind of know what's going on. So we're going to put the gap of ring 2 there, the lower compression ring, on that knot, which means that the upper compression ring has to be 180 degrees across from that. So that means ring number 3 is going to go there. Based on the observations of the rings I took off, it seems that the B and C of the ABC sandwich are supposed to be 180 degrees off from one another, and it would make sense for them to be 90 degrees off from the upper and lower compression rings, numbers 2 and 3. And so that, we've got 4 points on a compass, and we've got 5 things to place. And so then the scraper ring, which is not quite as important for sealing, that can go off more or less 90 degrees between the B and C. And in the destructions, that's what it's saying as well. All right, so here we go. We're going to start with the ABC sandwich because that's at the bottom of the piston, and you're supposed to load them from the bottom and work your way up. That is the A part, which is the oil scraper ring. And all of these rings, the ABC rings, are much flimsier than the compression ring. And in the Piston Mania, I took them off with my fingers, and I was thinking that that might be the best way to go. But I am going to try some different methods here. And so this is that ring tool that I got for Piston Mania. And if you remember, before I could even use it, I had to fix it so it would grab the rings properly. And really, it's absolutely rubbish. And so I did, based on that diagram, I bought one that looked like that diagram. It doesn't really inspire confidence that it says 3-way air duster on the package, but here we go. I know some of you like to make fun of me buying these cheaper tools, but the idea is to find the cheapest tool that will do the job, because it's quite possible I will never do this work ever again. Based on the diagram in the piston ring package, I bought one that looks like this. And these pistons are 96mm pistons, and so this is a 4-inch ring installing tool, which is 101mm, but it just did not have enough space. It could hardly get around the piston itself, and so I got this one instead. This one is a 4 5/8 inch, which is 120mm according to the package, but it is enough. It's just big enough to get around these 96mm pistons. In the end though, despite a gallant try with the appropriate tool, it seems that for these rings, the ABC sandwich, because they're so flimsy, you are better off being careful and just using your fingers. Following the general advice of installing rings, I decided I would stack them from the bottom, which meant starting with the lower piece of bread, the metal B ring, and then put the oil scraper ring on top of that. Finally, putting the upper piece of bread, the metal C ring, on the top of that. However, when I did that, I got them all kind of in position, but it seemed like there just wasn't enough room. I couldn't get them to line up and go in. Then I tried a different approach, which was to put the oil scraper ring in first, and then put the pieces of bread on the top and the bottom separately, and that worked a treat. If you're enjoying these videos, please consider subscribing and all that good stuff. Perhaps a team effort will get Amber back in the garage. Well, hey, listen, there's more than those rings. On to the next one. So ring 2 has a top, and it says it on it, which is very helpful. The ends that are being spread apart there have this kind of slight different shape on them, so it does seem to matter what way up it is. This ring is way thicker than our ABC sandwich, and you need that tool. And the tool worked well. You kind of slot it in at the back side there and then kind of let go, and it was good. Way better than any of those other tools. Okay, ring 3 is the upper compression ring. It is also quite thick, and I looked at it under a loupe and did as much research as I could figure out, and it seems like it doesn't have an up or a down, you just put it on. I did put a link for this tool in the description if any of you are interested. It was $19.99, works fine. Next up then is when I'm putting this into the cylinders itself, you're supposed to compress the rings. And that's what a regular ring compressor looks like, but this is a tapered ring compressor, and it apparently works much better. If it has anything to do with a Porsche, they cost $40 or $50. That one was $19.99 on Amazon.
Hit the notification bell, it's up there.
Yes, please. Alright, we have to move on right now to valve springs. There's more to be reconditioned. These little fellas have to come out, and this tool apparently does that. This is the rental tool from the local parts store. You give them $27, and then when you're done with it, you can give it back, or you can keep it if you'd like to, but I don't want to keep it. Since I first laid eyes on it, I really have had a dislike for it. The reason being is when you're trying to use it, it just doesn't work with you. It kind of fights you the whole time. And what it does is tries to jump off the spring and ping off into the distance in a very annoying manner. And so what I was doing there is using that zip tie on the very bottom to hold the claws onto the spring so that I can put some tension on it and get out what I now know are called these valve keepers or valve locks. Once you get that valve lock out, you can just pull up and it comes off. There we go. And that's it. Once the spring is off, there's nothing holding the valve and it just pushes out. And there we go, that is a intake valve there. Intake valves are slightly larger than the exhaust valves. And there's 2 intake valves and 2 exhaust valves. Kind of doing the same thing just to get more in and more out. That is the valve stem seal, I guess. Okay, here is the valve itself. Quite dirty looking, really. That is the valve spring retainer, the washer looking thing. And then those 2 small grommets are the valve lock or the valve retainer keepers. There seems to be a bunch of names for them, but you can see how they work there. They get pushed into position and the spring retainer can't come off unless you get them out. And that's what this whole tool is for that compresses the springs. I did whack the end of them there to make them kind of stay on better. And for this particular example here, it did work as intended. It didn't decide to ping off. But for the rest of them, I didn't mess with it. I did use that zip tie every time. I had this nightmare of some of those little valve keepers pinging off towards the ceiling, and I would never see them again. There are 12 valves on this side. It's a 24 valve engine. And that's the exhaust valve. That's much dirtier looking. That washer in the bottom there is the lower valve spring retainer that doesn't seem to want to come out. I am using the magnet there to pull out the valve keepers. While we have the cylinder head up on the table here, we might as well take off some of these plastic pieces. The first one is this plastic clip that holds some cable. It can come off now for sure. And along with that also is this camshaft position sensor, just an H5 Allen nut on there. Bit of WD-40 made that less tight. Kind of felt like it might snap off in there. And the cam position sensor is dirty. I don't know if we can test that or not, but it doesn't look broken. Okay, the cylinder head gasket we can see right now, it's awful looking, very dirty. And just pull that off. That's all there is to it, I suppose. It does seem to have, I don't know why some of them have holes and some don't. We might learn sometime. I gave it a quick spray off just to see how bad that is. It's obviously going to take quite a bit of work to get this clean.
Hey, Tony Soprano, or should I say, hey, Tony.
Parts cleaner test. We have some cleaning ahead of these exhaust and intake valves. They're really dirty. I don't know if there is any chemical that I can use to help, but I'm going to use the ones here that I happen to have in the tiny garage, and that is the AutoZone brake parts / parts cleaner, and then that's that CRC electric parts cleaner, which is the only one that seems to smell different of any of these that I've ever tried. And then finally on the left hand side there is the Walmart cheapy. It's like $2 a can. The CRC on the other hand is $8. All right, 20 minutes later, and shocker, the cheapest one is the only one that kind of did anything. So that Walmart's brake part cleaner did do some work in the 20 minutes. The CRC is second, I suppose, but it didn't do much. And then the AutoZone, not really much change. What that does tell me though is these chemical cleaners are not going to do much. I did the next day go and get some carb cleaner as well, and that was also thoroughly beaten by the $2 Walmart brake cleaner. Time to get serious. This is what I came up with. I don't have a lathe. This well-used drill will be my lathe. I also happen to have 4 random pieces of this Scotch-Brite material on a shelf in the garage. It's the softest abrasive that I have. I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not. I looked up what new ones look like and they're shiny. It sounds silly, but I really wasn't sure if this was some sort of fancy coating that was supposed to be there. It's like it was dipped in concrete. I also looked up just really how much they cost in case I totally messed this one up. And it seems like they're less than $50. So this is my guinea pig valve. So here I had some 1000 grit wet and dry sandpaper. We'll try that. And that's just really soapy water there for some lubrication. And it's working. I mean, I'm feeling good about how clean it is, but at the same time, I'm thinking maybe I'm just ruining it. Okay, now, 2000 grit sandpaper. And then some polish. It's the only metal polish I had. So it does look very pretty. I mean, I'm enjoying that part of it. There's 24 of these though. That's a lot of work if this is what you have to do. So some pitting on that flange area there. There's a job called lapping we have to do that might help with that, but it looks a lot better. And comparing that to just one of the other exhaust valves. The exhaust valves were much worse than the intake valves. Whee! The mail came. After the finagle with that tool from the local parts store, yes, that one, I went to Amazon and got this one. This one cost $19.99, and look, it comes with gloves. I'm going to wear them, yes. All right, I don't really know what you're supposed to do, but I'm going to start putting it together. There is instructions in it, but there's no diagrams. Of course, that means there's no way I'm going to know what to do. Fundamentally, at least, I understand that this C-clamp type device is supposed to clamp down on the cylinder head and will therefore press down on a spring on one side. So I'm putting it together with that in mind. I'm using one of those other adapters on the other side that sort of fits the size of the valve. And you can see it's on. It takes a bit of setup, but I think once you get it all set up, it's good. That handle kept falling off, so I just put some tape on it. Compared to the $27 rental tool from the local parts store, this $19.99 tool from Amazon is way better, and I'm glad I have it for when I have to put everything back together, because I won't have the problem of it flinging parts or itself all over the tiny garage. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Till next time.